Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Sorry for last-minute technical issues. So we have a last-minute ring-in as well, so everything's kind of on demand and moving pretty quickly. Dan Peterson, the Google Wave PM, was unfortunately sick, so we had to make do with what we have, and Jeff's going to fill in, and I'll do a proper intro before. But thanks, everybody, for joining. The presentation is obviously ready to ride the Google Wave. You guys probably all saw the announcements yesterday about Salesforce Chatter and the whole social networking movement, so this is a really good kind of dovetail into there. But you guys probably saw the announcement as well about the secret cloud, Chatter Cloud. We've got another cloud here that I just wanted to kind of show you. You've probably never seen this before, but I like to call it the Safe Harbor Cloud. So I'm not sure if you guys have seen this, but because it is a developer track, make sure you read it at the end. If you guys can tell me how many lines of code there are and how many words, just perfect. You guys win you win the award. Or even give you a free developer.force.com account. So brand new, never used. So we actually have quite a lot to go through today. The screen real estate's a little bit funky, so bear with us here. But what I wanted to do, I was going to introduce Dan, but I just wanted to introduce Jeff, who is the new business development manager at Google. He jumped in a car and I think beat all the speed limits on the way up to 101. So we're going to wing this and go for it as well. But it is a technical presentation, so we're going to try and do a bunch of demos and some really cool demos hopefully as well. But there's 3 or 4, so we're pushing the limits of this kind of demo environment. My name is Quinton Wall. As I said, I'm a technical architect, and I'm 18 months clean of on-premise, so I'm good. So I'm working really hard every day to do that. So like I said, we're going to move through really quickly on this. I just want to give you guys a super high-level agenda before we jump into it. So Jeff is going to give us kind of a first look at Wave and understand what it is, and you guys can kind of, if you haven't seen it before, it's pretty cool, so you'll get just that bit of feeling and understanding for it. Next, we're going to do more of a demo. So if you guys have seen the developer.force site, you may have seen the video demo on there. We've kind of extended that a little bit, made it work a little bit better, and we'll certainly share all the code afterwards for that one. And then we're going to jump into some code. So we're going to build ourselves a kind of a simple robot, connect it to Salesforce, and kind of see how it works. The plan is at the end, leave about 10 minutes for Q&A, but we're going to be rushed. I know there's going to be a lot of people asking questions and that sort of thing. So Jeff, myself, and David from Google as well are probably going to hang around afterwards. So if you guys have questions there, hang around. There's another special surprise that Jeff will talk about as well, if you guys do hang around to the end of the session. But without further ado, I'm going to pass it over to Jeff if he's ready down there. So, Jeff.
Thanks. All right. I am not Dan Peterson, as the slide says. I am Jeff Eddings, and I'm with Google. I head up biz dev for Google Wave with our new business development team, and I'm here to talk about Google Wave. I found out about this about an hour ago, so I hope you'll forgive me if I'm a little rusty, and if I don't do the Dan Peterson impression just right, you'll hopefully forgive me. So, see, this is working? Not working. Okay, that's fine. All right, so what is Google Wave? Well, this is sort of what we're here for today. Google Wave was, it came about a couple years ago from the 2 engineers that brought you Google Maps. And they had sort of declared victory and said, all right, what do we do next? And I think they locked themselves into a closet down in Sydney, Australia, and came up with this notion of, well, what would email look like today if we reinvented it using today's technology and some of the techniques that we have available to us today. Email was invented, probably more than 40 years ago. And fundamentally, it hasn't changed in those 40 years, right? We're still doing the basic set of things, with SMTP and passing messages back and forth. And so these 2 guys said, well, let's figure out a better way to do that. And the better way that they came up with was Google Wave. And so in September of this year, earlier this year, we actually launched a developer preview of Google Wave. And that's the look and feel that I think if any of you have Wave invites and have had a chance to check out the client, this is something that looks familiar to you. Even if you haven't used Google Wave yet, then it still may look familiar, right? There's this paradigm of the three pane model of communication, right? There's the navigation and contacts on the left. There's the inbox or the search panel in the middle, and then on the right-hand side is the sort of the message or the content itself. And so it's not something that is necessarily groundbreaking from that perspective, right? But what is, I think, interesting and groundbreaking is that we don't see Google Wave as just a single product, a single solution. We developed Wave to be a technology, a broad technology, a platform, a set of protocols, so that we can actually get it out into the wild and hopefully let everybody use it and everybody interoperate with it. So the best way to think about it is, to me anyway, this is the best way to think about it. When we talk about Wave, we sometimes refer to Google Wave, and that will be the hosted client that we have, much like we have Gmail today. But the underlying technology of Gmail really is still email. It's still SMTP, passing messages back and forth. There's a great client on top of it in the way of Gmail. But fundamentally, it's still email. And I don't have to think necessarily about, if I want to send you a message, and I see some familiar faces in the audience, but if I want to send you a message via email, I don't have to think about, as I type your email address, will this reach this person, right? Like it's been probably 20, 30 years since we worried about that, right? And so the notion is that, can we get to a point with Wave where we start talking about Wave as a technology, Wave as a unit? The Google Wave that we see here really is just sort of the Google implementation of Wave. But the hope is that we'll see this as a broader technology play. We've got the best graphic designers at Google, as you can tell. All of our graphic designers have PhDs in computer science. No, this is just sort of showing you the model that it is today with email, right? It's a message that gets created client side somewhere. It gets sent to another user. That user receives it, and maybe they add some other content to it and reply back, or maybe they include somebody else. They forward that content, et cetera, et cetera. It tends to get pretty confusing. I mean, how many of us have been copied on an email thread late, and then spent like 10 minutes just trying to figure out, I'm sorry, what is the thread of conversation, and what am I supposed to be responding to? And right, that's a really common occurrence for me anyway. And so the notion with Google Wave is, I don't know if you guys have heard of this thing called the cloud, but we're saying, listen, let's instead of passing these messages back and forth between each other, let's actually store that message in the cloud, host it, and then everybody comes to that and collaborates and communicates through that hosted conversation, that hosted message. And that's really the basic idea of Google Wave. There's not a whole lot more than that, but there is, right? Because we hired lots of PhDs in computer science, and we got to give them something to do. So there's some really, really hard problems that we're solving here around concurrency and what happens when two people edit the same thing at the same time, and how does that get resolved? And so that's some of the hard problems that Google Wave solves. Hopefully, we can solve that sort of at the base layer, and everybody can take advantage of the solution and build on top of that as a platform. And speaking of building on top of that as a platform, we've got a set of APIs that we allow folks to build on top of the Google Wave client. Again, that three-pane product that I showed you earlier. And I'm going to demo in a minute, but there's a couple of different ways that we allow developers to extend that platform. The two ways that we extend that client itself are via robots and gadgets. So robots essentially is an automated participant on a wave. That's really all it is. It's just like any other participant that you might add to a wave where there's ostensibly a human behind it. In this case, they are automated participants. There's a web app behind it, some server or some code behind it. What's it good for? Well, as it says, it's good for automating common tasks. You'll see some examples of that coming up. But for example, you can imagine spell correction is a robot, right? It watches the conversation, finds incorrectly spelled words, is able to correct them or offer you suggestions for correction. On-the-fly translations could be robots. So those are kind of examples of robots that affect the flow of conversation. You can actually use robots to tie back into other systems as well, and that's really the preferred way of integrating out third-party systems with Google Wave. If you've got a content management system or some other system that you need to pull data into and out of from a Wave, robots a great way to do that. It's that sort of proxy to allow you to do that. The second way we allow for extending Wave is through gadgets. Now, gadgets are pretty familiar to most people. If you ever used iGoogle, if you've seen any web page virtually, gadgets are just discrete sets of little pieces of functionality that get embedded into web pages. Much the same way you can actually embed gadgets right into a Wave, and you can see some examples here. Right on the right there, you see an example of a Google map that's been embedded into a Wave. All right, so big deal, like anybody can embed gadgets, right? What's the big difference? Well, the big difference with Wave is that that map gadget now, for example, is completely shared amongst all the Wave participants. So anytime I make a change on that map, let's say I put a place marker on there, or I pan around or zoom, that's going to get reflected in real time to every other Wave participant who is viewing it at that moment. And guess what? Robots have access to that as well. You can imagine, for example, taking action on where, now I'm showing a map of Australia, and suddenly, facts about Australia start streaming into the Wave, right? There's lots of ways that you can see some of these interactions happen. So that's how you extend the Google Wave client. How do you actually take that functionality and put it into other websites? We actually allow that as well. That right-hand pane that you saw with the content, that's the Wave. You can actually take that Wave and put it right into any other web page on the web, which means that you can bring along with it the great sort of real-time collaboration of that Wave, the ability to embed gadgets, the ability to add robots, all this kind of thing. And so you can actually make your site much more collaborative simply by embedding Wave into it. All right, demo time. Here's hoping it works. Okay. Okay. So you've got this set up, Quentin. Should I just open up new tab? Okay. All right. Everybody see that? Okay. Did we say dollhouse? Okay. Okay. Can you log out? Okay. Oh, sure, let's do that. Demo on the fly here. Okay, so I'm Quentin, it turns out, and you can see a new message just popped up in my middle pane there. Obviously, if you're going to do real-time communication, you need to have real-time updates of your inbox as well, and that's exactly what you're seeing here. If I click on this, what it'll do is open up that Wave, and I'm going to actually expand it so that for demo purposes we can see what's going on here. So, before I jetted up here about an hour and a half ago, I got on the phone with a very sick Dan Peterson and David, and we said, we need to figure out what we're going to do here. Like, Jeff, do you know what to talk about? I guess so. Okay, what's the demo going to look like, et cetera. And if we had just a little more time, maybe an extra hour or so, I believe this is exactly what we would have done. We would have opened up a Wave, started a new Wave, and you can see David started this Wave here, and he's the avatar on the left, and then Quentin is the middle one, and there's my happy face. And you can see that that action, David added Jeff Eddings, is actually noted in the Wave, so you can see when things like that happen, right? With email, like when did someone join an email thread conversation? Not entirely sure, but with the richer environment of Wave, you can actually note those kinds of things. And as I'm talking here, you can see somebody is mysteriously typing, and that, of course, is David. And I can watch in real time as he types. Now, what's I think really interesting is that not only can David type while this is going on, I can as well. And so we have concurrent editing going on at the same time on the same document. And it's actually pretty powerful. I mean, it seems like a relatively simple feature, but what we found within the Wave team, I mean, at this point we are building Wave, using Wave, right? All of our meetings are in Wave, all of our design docs, et cetera, are in Wave. Communication, I think, from sort of the dawn of time, right, from smoke signals on up, I think has strived really hard to bring that sort of proxy of a communication as close to real-time face-to-face communication as possible, right? That's really what we're striving to do. That's what video conferencing or audio conferencing or chat, these things really are trying to get us closer to face-to-face real-time communication because we believe that is the most productive way to communicate and collaborate with somebody, is to be face-to-face with somebody. And what we're finding on the Wave team is that we can actually cross that threshold and actually become more effective than being face-to-face in real time. There's many examples where we'll have a meeting of 10, 12 people in the same room. I can only imagine what it would sound like if all 10, 12 people tried to talk at the same time to express their ideas and get it all down on paper. But when everybody is logged into Wave, we can actually collaborate at the same time on the same document. And as we're going through we can actually see the document being created in front of us, or the meeting agenda, or what have you. So a quick demo here. You can see, for example, David here, right in line. This is one of those things that's annoying with email that's solved beautifully with Wave. Right in line, you can see that we said who, Jeff, David, and David responded to that little segment and said, "Quick note: Dan is out sick. Looks like we're winging it, Jeff," and we certainly are. I can do the same thing here, and can I do the same thing? Oh, yeah, there it is. And say Moscone South, really not north, right? And I can actually put in my response there as well. And we can actually communicate to each other as well, where David just said show playback, which I definitely will in a minute. Here's an example of a map. Let's see, it's an awfully big map. So I don't know, like let's say, David, do you want to just start tooling around in that map, and we can sort of show. Now, David, is one of the core engineers for Google Wave, and he'll be around later to answer questions for any who need it. But what he can do is he can actually make changes on that map, and in real time you're going to start seeing changes appear in this map. Again, the takeaway here is that this is a Google Maps gadget, right? It's not that different from any other Google Maps gadget that you might see out on the web. The difference is that there have been a few API changes, very few, that allow you to take advantage of the shared state and the concurrency model, so that any changes that get reflected in one automatically get communicated and dispersed to each version of that running, and you can actually do this collaboration in real time. So, in fact, you know what I'm going to do? I'm definitely going to need a drink after this. So, let me do this. I'm going to edit this message. We're going to come down here, and we're going to add. Here we go. There it is. Okay. Let's go for drinks afterwards. Who's in? And so this is going to be an example of adding a gadget. We've got this nice little gadget called the yes, no, maybe gadget. It is about the simplest gadget you can imagine. It allows you to answer yes, no, maybe. So David's in. I'm a maybe at this point. I'm not really feeling too well. No, it turns out I got a call from my wife. The kids are sick. I got to go home. No. So you can see this stuff being updated in real time. David made a message there as well. So this is just a sort of a quick. Has anybody seen the hour and 20-minute YouTube demo? Yeah. All right. So I'm buying each of you a drink for sitting through that. But for those of you who haven't, this is sort of the quick, like 5-minute version or the 10-minute version of that demo. You can see some of the functionality and see some of the potential for it. So, okay, and then there was another demo. Were you going to do? Wait, who's going to do the other demo? Was there another demo? Yeah. Okay. So we had another really cool demo planned. Sorry, we're not going to do it today, but I'm happy to talk about it afterwards if you'd like to talk. It's basically a robot. Why don't I just describe it in 30 seconds? A company called Twilio does telephony APIs, and what they did is they developed a robot where if you add the robot in, it could detect phone numbers within the wave, and will actually add a little button to the end of it that allows you to call that number. It initiates the phone call. You type in what your phone number is, and it will initiate the point-to-point phone call that way. Once it's done, it actually records that conversation. It will transcribe that conversation, and it will give you the option of actually embedding it right into the wave. It's actually a really slick demo. Now, some of the things that we've done recently is introduce some things like regex inclusion. So, one of the issues with robots will be, well, how do you discover robots? How do you know when to add a robot? And we're giving hooks for developers to be able to essentially specify a regex pattern. And when we notice that particular, when we have a match in that pattern in a wave, we're going to essentially give a very small indication to the end user to say, hey, guess what? There's a robot that that is very useful for what you just typed in. Would you like to add it? You can then add it, for that wave, for all waves, by default, etc. So. Okay. Okay. So just to sort of, drive home this point yet again, what we're thinking about here is a cloud-based hosted message that everybody can connect to and collaborate with None of this message passing back and forth. You can imagine, for example, we can make tighter security, right? If you're not passing messages back and forth, you have much better control over where that message is and where it sits. And I'm going to talk a little more about that in a minute. But again, the idea is that we have developed the initial parts of Google Wave of Wave. We've got a version of it running in our own data centers. We've got that server running. We've got the client that you've seen that I've shown you. That's sort of Google Wave, right? But what we would really love to do is, in order for it to really succeed, I think we want lots of people to run Google Wave, right? But not only run Google Wave, run things that look like Google Wave, but maybe is your own product. But at least be able to interoperate between those two systems so that if I want to collaborate with you and you're using a system that isn't Google Wave, right, brand, then we're going to be able to do that and we're going to still be able to get stuff done and collaborate. But we're also thinking very hard about companies that might want to do that in a very secure way, right? It's one thing to say, oh, we're all open and let's collaborate, but that tends to make CIOs very, very nervous. So how do you sort of get around that problem? And we've actually thought a lot about that, and we hopefully have come up with a way that supports that model as well. Novell is a company that everyone knows. They introduced a product recently called Pulse. Now, what's funny about Pulse is that I think it's one of those great minds think alike kind of thing, right? They developed this thing called Pulse that looks and feels a lot like Google Wave. It was done sort of in parallel, right? We were Newton to their Leibniz, right? They developed this thing that's really cool. But the minute that Wave was announced a few months ago, we got the phone call from Novell that said, hey, listen, let's interoperate. This makes a lot of sense. We've developed something. You guys are developing something. It really makes a lot of sense to share. And so they're actually our very first Wave providers. They've got the Pulse. They haven't actually launched this product yet, but they've got a version of their Pulse server running that can federate with our developer sandbox as well. So we've actually got a proof of concept up and running. Underlying all of this federation is the Google Wave Federation Protocol. It's very similar in nature to, like, let's say SMTP, which is an open protocol, standards-based, and I'll talk about that. So what is it? Again, it enables independent Wave providers to interoperate, right? Again, I don't think too hard when I see it's Newton, right? Yeah. When I see Newton and I want to send him an email, I don't think too hard about, oh, he's on some other mail server. Is it going to reach him? That's the idea here. We want to be able to interoperate those things. Just like anybody can run an SMTP server, right? And in the early days, which of us didn't, right? But being able to run those SMTP servers and Wave servers to be able to interoperate, send messages back and forth, collaborate in a way that is open and, again, nobody thinks about it. It's just seamless and it just works. Waveprotocol.org is the place to go if you are interested in watching how that spec gets developed. But more importantly, if you're interested in helping contribute to it and develop and help contribute, if you have certain things that you'd like to see in that kind of protocol, please come. We're developing it absolutely in the open. So why do this, right? Well, obviously, encouraging the adoption of this Wave technology. I mean, the more we open it up, the more people will use it, and the more that we'll see it get implemented. Obviously, the internet is based on open APIs and standard protocols, and so we took a page from that playbook, and we're going to totally open this up as well. One common criticism for cloud technology is lock-in, right? People say, well, if I host my stuff there, won't I be locked in and I won't be able to, let's say if I need to move, I'm not going to be able to do so, or there's that interoperation question as well. But by federating it and opening it up, you can actually, take your choice of Wave providers. I mean, today, again, you don't think about like, oh, I'm going to go with Gmail versus Hotmail versus Yahoo Mail, right? Because you know that they all interoperate together, and you know that you're not going to get locked into one system, and so that's definitely a part of why we're doing this. And also, we just want to avoid fragmentation. We've seen so many technologies that were developed, ended up getting siloed. It's maybe successful and useful for a certain population, but it just doesn't get broad acceptance because we didn't decide to open it up kind of underneath. All right, so just a little bit of technical background. Despite the business development in my title, once long ago, I did sling some code. So bear with me. So the Wave data model. We've been talking about. Think of Wave as as sort of equivalent to email. The Wave data model looks a little bit like this. I think the most interesting sort of takeaway from this is that the wave itself is not the discrete unit that we're sort of federating and doing concurrency on. It's actually the wavelets inside a wave, right? So a wave is essentially a collection of wavelets. And then what is a wavelet? A wavelet is a container. It's got a set of participants. That makes sense. It's got a set of documents. That also makes sense. Inside that document is an XML document containing the content and a set of annotations that go along with it. So that is actually your discrete atomic unit that we're working with, both in terms of federation and in terms of concurrency. And that becomes important because within a particular wave, you may decide, I may decide to have a wave with everybody in this room, right? And then I'm trying to remember, like, oh, what was that guy's name? And I may do a private wavelet with David, just the two of us, to say, do you remember that guy? Oh yeah, I remember him. This is his name. Okay, thanks. That's actually going to be, something that is just between the two of us. It will not actually be seen by anybody else. And it's going to be important because we're both, hosted on the same wave server, and for security reasons, it will not actually leave the premises. And so, again, when's the right time to federate? When you want to start to interoperate with other wave servers. If I decide that I want to do more than collaborate with David, I want to collaborate with somebody else outside of my domain. That's when federation comes into play. And the addresses look a lot like email addresses, very familiar. Again, if everybody's participating together within one server, one company, one cluster, then there's no reason to federate, and all is well. The minute you want to be able to collaborate with others from outside there, that's the time to collaborate. That's the time to federate. But you can have a complete on-premise solution as well. So that's actually something. For example, I just described that example with David where I wanted to have a confidential chat. Even when I do federate, that will stay on-premise within the server that I'm using. Oops. Again, here's where we are so far. We've published the draft protocol specs for the federation protocol, as well as that conversation model that I showed. We've open sourced around 40,000 lines of code, and you can get it here. And let's see here. I'm going to sort of skip through some of this stuff. Yeah, I will. So what we're doing right now, we've opened up a federation port on this developer sandbox. So now, if you want to build your a wave server or a wave-like server and federate, we can arrange for that. Although it is still highly experimental, i.e., it goes up and down a lot. And then we're looking to get the licensing right. I mean, that's actually a stumbling block for a lot of developers who especially work within companies, but we want to make sure that that's going to encourage a community-based development. Sadly, I don't have VPN access here, and I wasn't able to sort of figure it out, so I can't show you the federation demo, but believe me, it was really cool. Tell all your friends. Okay, so where we're headed towards. Obviously, we're working hard to get to a stable set of specs so that once something is stable, people feel more comfortable in sort of implementing on top of it. So we want to get there as soon as possible. Now that we've opened up this federation port on our developer sandbox, we're also starting to learn a lot of things about it, right? And so we're going to continue to gain more experience around that. We're going to hopefully productionize that to wave.google.com, the production wave server that we're running, not the developer sandbox, and that'll happen hopefully soon as well. We also want to open source the Google Wave product that I showed you, the client, the server, all that stuff. We want to completely, not completely open source it. I think there are a couple pieces in there that our lawyers were really, really, really nervous about open sourcing. But for the most part, the lion's share of the code, we're going to actually completely open source, and people can take it, download it, play with it, install it, change it, what have you. Encourage development. And finally, we're really looking forward to building a reference implementation for this sort of, client-server communication and also the federation stuff. If you're familiar with OpenSocial, this is similar to the Apache Shindig reference implementation. Something that people can actually download, install, run in their data centers, and feel comfortable that it's actually production quality. We cannot do this alone, however, obviously. That's why we're doing this out in the open and hoping that the community will join us. We'd like to work with you. And I hope you will visit these various places and check it out. Thanks.
All right. Is my mic back on yet? Mic, please. There we go. All right. Thanks, guys. So how many people before this presentation had actually logged in and seen Wave? And not including the hour-and-a-half thingy on the web. Oh, look at the hands go down. So what do you guys think? Cool, kind of cool, might take off, might not take off. So what we wanted to do now was kind of just jump in a little bit and give you kind of a real-world example from the Salesforce side of things. So you saw kind of the on-premise solution as well. I'm a recovering on-premise addict, as I said before, so still get the shivers when I see that, but I'm getting better every day. But I wanted to jump in and give you guys a demo. So demo speaks much better. The only other thing I noticed as well, I don't know if you did, the further you get away from IT, the cheesier your grin gets as well. Did you notice that one on there? But let's have a look at like a standard kind of customer support scenario. So I'm logged into Salesforce. This is not going to be anything new to you guys. And if I have a look, I've got a bunch of solutions inside my org. So this is for a fictitious company called Booyah Mobile. They sell mobile phones. Surprisingly enough, they sell iPhones, and there's a bunch of solutions on what to do if certain things happen. So typically what would happen is someone would call up the phone, talk to a customer support rep, or maybe even go online, send an email, and it'll go in, email to case, all that kind of cool stuff. But what happens if we wanted to make it a little bit more interactive? So Jeff kind of spoke about robots, and robots being kind of the way that you can reach out to your reach outside of Wave into other applications, a la Salesforce as an example. So if we look at this example, oh, I'm online, that's kind of good, isn't it? So let's have a look at a really simple example if I can scroll, which it doesn't look like I can. So let's make sure this works. Here we go. So let's say I've logged into my Wave account, and I know Booyah Mobile has a little robot that they've created, and I want to actually start working with this robot and say, I want to start a new Wave and start a conversation. And as you'll see, sometimes it doesn't get in. So I'm going to create myself a new Wave because I logged out. There we go. This is looking wonderful. So far, it's all pretty good. So let me log out, and I'll come back in. Wonders of real time. Hey, come on, let me in here. Sorry, guys, just give me a sec. Yes. Yeah. It'll come. So there we go. Now we'll be better. Thank you. This is just working wonderful. Sorry, guys. Is it Gmail? Ah, thank you. So maybe I need to go to the cheesy grin. So hey, there we go. Who needs Wave when there's people in the crowd? So let's make sure it starts up. So while our Wave is coming up, let's just log into Salesforce at the same time. Wow, this ain't looking good. Okay, we are almost back. So let's see if we can start something with Booyah here. We're really lucky it's going to start for us. Really promise once it starts, it's good. So, here we go. Finally. So what I've done is I've added started a new Wave, and what I'm doing is I'm actually interacting with a robot, the Booyah mobile service. So it starts to get kind of really interactive. All of a sudden, I kind of start to feel like I'm still at a website, but I'm kind of not. So let's say I have a bit of a hardware problem. I'm going to click, okay, I have a hardware problem. So what's happened now is the robot's going to come back and it started a conversation with me. So I feel like I'm talking with a real person. I never know if I'm not. So I might have a problem. Let's say my iPhone is too bright. How do I dim it? So what it's going to do behind the scenes here now is it's going to go out and reach into Salesforce. It's going to create a case for us so we can kind of track the case. But it's also going to search for those solutions that I showed you guys before. And it's going to match on a couple of keywords and turn around and see if there's any keywords that make sense. So, hey, look, I found something. This guy might work. Maybe this isn't the right one. Let me go to the next one and see if I have... Sorry for the small resolution, but hey, there you go. So I found a couple of things. Maybe they help, maybe they don't help. If it helped, what I could do is I could say, this helps, I'm done, close the case. So if we have a look inside Salesforce, I'm going to have a look at the cases that opened today. And one, she comes back. So look at this. I have a case that's just started and it's in process. It's working. So I've created a case right out of Wave. So what it's using behind the scenes is the force.com for Google App Engine Toolkit. I don't know if you guys have had a look at that one, but behind the scenes, this is a Java kind of web app that uses the toolkit and hosts in there. So all is good. I'm working on my Wave. Life is working good. I'm interacting. I've found a couple of solutions that may help. If it helps, I can click, this helps, I'm done. It'll close the case in Salesforce, and all of a sudden we've had that whole new cheap channel, and it's been very interactive. It's not an email and get it back into your mailbox later on. But let's say I'm not quite done, and that didn't solve my problem. I actually want to click Chat Now. So what it's going to do is it's going to go and look inside Salesforce and see anybody that's Wave enabled. And I've just added that as kind of a custom checkbox and put a Google Wave account in there. So what it's gone and added our Ninja support agent here, who can hopefully help me in real time. Hopefully help me in real time. Don't you love real life things? Okay. So it's a thesis. I have a big problem. I couldn't lock myself in my room. I couldn't buy some sunglasses. Trust us, it looks really good. Dave, there. Hey, there we go. So I might add a response in here. Oops. The resolution's killing me, sorry. So, Dave, didn't you add something in there? There we go. There we go. Look at that. So, wonders of technology. The connection is a little slow. Everyone's twittering on here, I think. So, so as you can see, Wave not only is a communication channel, but it also improves people's productivity and sense of humor as well. So I'm going to jump through it really quick. But there's a really good, super quick example on Wave, how it might interact with Salesforce. But what happens if I'm inside Salesforce later on and I wasn't on the Wave? I want to kind of go back to the trail of what happened. I need to be able to kind of keep that. And so Jeff kind of alluded to the embed API before. So if I look at the case that was being created, what's happened down here as well, all the way through this process, we've made just a really simple Visualforce page. This resolution is killing. So that actually keeps that whole conversation in here. And I'm surely going to make sure that I, as the support agent, go find our little Ninja support guy here who told me to read the nice manual and see what happens. So, we're not scrolling down very well. But anyway, scroll's not working very well. But hey, there we go. So you get the idea. Sorry, the resolution's really, really bad on here. But what we've done is we've been able to embed the Wave right inside a Salesforce case. So all of a sudden we have context of what we're doing. But let's jump into a bit of code because it is a developer session. So let's have a little bit more fun and see if we can ruin things even more. There you go. So hands up, how many people have actually done Java programming or Java web apps in the audience as well? Okay. So this is going to kind of come back to you guys. And like me, I hadn't done it for a while before I got back into Wave as well. So there's a few things that you need to understand. You guys are probably used to the concept of a servlet and how servlets work in a web app. So Wave robots are basically servlets. So let's start with that. I'm going to skip through some of these kind of good fun stuff. But before you get into actually building and developing, there's a couple of things you need. And obviously for the sake of time, I can't get into all of these here. But obviously Eclipse, install the Google App Engine for the plugin for Eclipse, because that's your development environment where you're building it. So the majority of this work is done inside App Engine, and it's going to be deployed into the App Engine cloud. After that stage, obviously set up your app. How many people have made an app in App Engine? All right, so you guys kind of understand it as well. We can go into some more details later on. But then finally, the last bit you need is that force.com toolkit for Google App Engine. How many people have used that one? Hey, look at that. So a couple. So that's the kind of secret sauce that glues these two clouds together. So we'll go into an example here, and all the code that you see we'll post out on like the developer side or something, so you have a real example on how to use each of the pieces. But for now, we're going to kind of jump straight in. So there's two parts to a wave. So you saw before, let me jump back here. You saw before here that my little Booyah robot has a nice little image, has a little name, it has a website all about it. So I can start to give it a profile, a little bit of information, make it a little bit more kind of human readable and friendly. So that is controlled by this profile servlet. It's really, really super simple, so we're just going to jump into it quickly because it's not the most exciting bit of code, but we'll have a look anyway. Sure it's that one. There we go. So super, super simple. I'm not going to go through all the details, but I can set up a URL. I can give the robot a name. I can give it a little bit of details about it. So the page URL is kind of its profile if you want to read a little bit more about it. And so what we've done in this instance, we'll jump into a little bit more. We're going to make a real robot here. So what we've done, if I can bring up. So we've added Sassy the Simple Wave. So Sassy has an image. We obviously set that through our profile. Sassy has a little bit of details about him. So I can put whatever I want in here and make Sassy feel like kind of a real human. So I want people to interact with him and think that he's a real human versus nothing else. And Sassy has a little bit of a problem with opportunities to make contacts. So this is way too many late nights, so I apologize for that one. But really, there's kind of two parts to the wave, like I said. So I've got my profile servlet, really, really super simple. I've gone in and I've added the details there. But it's kind of useless without Sassy just showing his pretty little face on here. I want to be able to add some information. So there's a few things that happen when I add. So everything now outside of the profile is controlled by another servlet that we're going to actually go through and change a little bit. So the first thing that always happens when a robot gets created is what we need to do is override this process events. So it's analogous to kind of like the do get or do post if you've done any kind of Java servlet programming before. So what you'll see is the very first thing that happens, so Jeff kind of spoke about the wave and the wavelet. So what we're dealing with now is the wavelet. So we've got our context of our conversation in the wavelet. So the very first thing that happens is a robot is always added to a wave. So I might want to do something. So in the demo that we showed before, what I did was I created a gadget that gave us that welcome to Booyah Mobile, here's my kind of menu system, and I can start interacting like that with gadgets. In our simple example, we're going to make it super, super simple. So we've added a nice little text line here that says, I'm alive. So I told you it was the hello world. So let's look and see how that works. If I go and create a nice new wave here with Sassy, here he is. He's come back and said, I'm alive. So beautiful. So all super exciting, nice and easy for us to kind of get going at this stage. But Sassy by himself is kind of boring, so I need to start kind of interacting a little bit more and kind of handling events. I might want to do something if someone asks a question like we did in the other one. I might need to interact, make it a little bit more dynamic. So in our example here, what we need to do is start thinking about events. So obviously Java is that kind of event-oriented approach. So what I want to do is I want to handle an event called self-added event. So inside the robot, we have the ability to register for a number of events that we're interested in. So if we have a look all the way down here, I should have pre-opened this guy. There's a file in here in the Wave called capabilities. So this is where I go and register my actual events. So if I didn't add any, I wouldn't hear about anything apart from blip submitted. It's not going to get me very far. Apart from the Wave being added. But I'm interested in blip submitted. There's a whole bunch of other events that you can register to, but only kind of add your intent to listen to the ones that you're really interested in. Otherwise, you're going to get a bunch of information coming through. So now that we've added the capabilities of our blip submitted, and a blip is basically a bit of information or conversation that's going through the wavelet. So for me, it's I've typed something and I've hit enter. Actually, I don't even think I had to enter. So what we're going to do here, I pre-canned it, obviously. So in our communication here, we're going to handle the blip submitted. So this is kind of Java 101 sort of code here that we just want to handle a certain event. So nothing super new here. But what you'll see is I'm going to expect something to happen when a message comes in as part of my blip. So this is where I can start handling that user interaction. Obviously, you can get much smarter than this, but I made it super simple at this stage. So what I'm going to do is if the event type equals blip submitted, obviously, I want to do something. The first thing I want to do is I want to check to make sure, in my instance, it's get cases. Super simple. But when I do get cases, there's a few other things I want to do. So if you think about here, I'm going to jump back to my Wave. And I don't want to log into Salesforce for whatever reason. I'm having a conversation with the other guys in Salesforce about maybe customer service. There's this rogue support rep that keeps telling me to read the manual quite a lot, and I want to work out what's going to do with him. So I want to go and have a look at the cases that are out there. So I could be having a nice long conversation. I don't want to jump out of the Wave and start a whole other kind of communication thread that I have to send it back through again. I want to kind of stay and keep my context in the cloud and in that conversation. So imagine I've added a bunch of other people, and then I just want to, I've added my sassy agent to here who knows how to talk to Salesforce, and I just want to kind of get a list of the cases that are out there. So because we've added that handle event, the blip knows about how to do something with it, and in this instance, it knows how to get a list of a whole bunch of cases straight out of Salesforce. So you'll see, is my iPhone backlight is too bright, all that sort of stuff, the cases that we got before. So all of a sudden, I'm inside my Wave, I'm having my conversation, running my business. I can just add a new participant, in this instance a robot, go into Salesforce, get the information, keep the context of what I'm doing, and just kind of keep moving on. So pretty cool and pretty powerful, even with this super simple example. So we already spoke about the handling events and the blip submitted, the capabilities file. The next thing that you saw happen, but was kind of smoke and mirrors at that stage, is connecting to Salesforce. So what we did in this instance is we created a very simple Salesforce.com agent. Marketing will probably kill me for doing SFTC. But the agent has a pretty simple role in life. It needs to know how to connect to Salesforce, and it needs to know how to do certain things with inside Salesforce. So obviously in this instance, get solutions. I want to query the solutions that are out there. In the Salesforce agent from the main demo, again, we'll post the code after this as well. It does a lot more. Creates cases, closes cases, all that sort of stuff. So there's a lot more information in there, but you'll kind of get the idea from here. So if we jump into the code again here and just have a look, what I'm really doing here is no real rocket science here at all. This is all the Force.com for Google toolkit. So once you guys get familiar with that, have a look at the demos and the tutorials on that. You'll understand this pretty straightforward, but really all I'm doing is pulling username and password out of my web XML for a NIT file. I didn't want to put it in here and hard code it. I'm going to make a connection into my agent, and then I'm going to do what I call punch in, is kind of basically get ready for work. So if I look at my agent, all the agent is doing is making a session connection to Salesforce. But if we jump back to our Wave, up we go. So the next thing, once I've actually connected, is I want to get the solutions and get a result. And then all I'm going to do, obviously you can see behind here, is loop through those results, make it somewhat formatted, and print it out, put it back on the Wave. So a couple of things, obviously. Wave is still in preview mode, so if you're trying this and you notice that when you add a bit of text, so like the results view append, for example, gets added twice. Right now, you just have to kind of call a delete before you add it. So it's still in preview, it's still kind of working, and maybe the guys down there will tell me how to get around it, but that was the way that I managed to do it on here. But if we have a look at our agent to get solutions, really simple. In this instance, what I'm doing is I'm connecting, again, using the force.com toolkit to get a query results and a connection. So really, really simple. Select solution name, so on and so forth. And obviously not formatted very well. But once I get that, I'm going to loop through my results, and I want to display them and pass them back. So you'll see this one extra kind of step here that we've added about kind of wrapping a solution. And because Google Wave, as its persistent engine, uses JDO, we need to make all the fields that we want to store in there persistable. So the query result that comes back natively with the toolkit, it doesn't have that persistence in there. So in our instance, all I've done is I've created a really simple wrapper class here that makes all of the fields that I need out of interest to make them persistable. So you'll see here it's now kind of JDO friendly. So we're not really doing anything with persistence and storing messages in this instance. In the demo that we did before, we're doing a lot more because we're kind of storing it. We're making a few conversations, and then we need to pull the solutions out, all those sort of things. So in here it's maybe overkill, but it's kind of a good practice to get into, especially if we want to store some state in the App Engine and Wave. Let's jump on back. So we went through embedding the waves before. You saw it before. It's actually a really super simple API with inside Salesforce. You just have to kind of make a super simple controller that will decode the URL just to take the formatting correctly. And then the most important thing is if you can see where it says Wave Panel, HTTP, Google Wave, so on and so forth. If you're really adventurous, play around with adding a little bit more on the end of that, and you can change what gets embedded and what doesn't. So for instance, if I don't have, I think it's the slash or the wave at the end there, I'll get my whole kind of Google Wave environment embedded in there, which obviously I don't want to do. I just want the message. So, but you can certainly play around with it, and it's kind of a fun way to see what else you can fit in there, change styles, all that sort of thing. But the embed API is done really well, and it's super simple. So think of if you're used to using Google Maps and that sort of API, same approach. So it doesn't take much work at all. And again, we'll certainly pass on the code after this. So that's our real super quick, simple, sassy servlet wave robot. And what we did, we went through creating our profile servlet that we can add sassy, make him look kind of cool, have a bit of information. We embedded it into Salesforce. We also handled and responded blips, and more importantly, we connected to Salesforce as well, which is kind of the big thing that people are starting to look at now. What do I do now that I have this wave in this conversation? Because I want to move my business and my communication into there. So I know it's super quick, but I'm actually surprisingly on time. So at the end, because I want to make sure we kind of give time for questions and answers, the guys at Google will do a quick announcement at the end in terms of a giveaway. Sorry? Check my wave. There you go. Look at that. So, wow, look at this. Yeah, thank you. So look at this. See, there's the cheesy face again. So, always do it quick. Okay. So, what you're seeing here, it's like kind of feeding bacon to a pig when you're talking and watching at the same time. It's not quite right. But so what you'll see here, it's a little difficult to see, but the guys at Google, because I know a bunch of people want to look at Wave, but they haven't been able to get like a Wave account so they can get in and play with it, and it's been pretty restricted. But the guys at Google have been good enough to give, how many are there? Everybody in the room, if they log into this website, will get a Google Wave account. So thanks to Google for those guys for that, and make the most of it. If you're going to play with it, try and set up a sandbox account as well and really start developing stuff to kind of build that community there. So I'll leave that up there, and there's a couple of housekeeping things that I'll just go through quickly, and then I'll bring it back, unless everyone needs kind of 2 more minutes to sit and look. Dreamforce Wave invite. So. Okay, so if you guys didn't hear that, just put in your email address and badge number, I think it is on there. So just go in there, and you guys will get a Wave account. So thanks to the Google guys for that one. Okay, so I'm just going to move on. We'll give that out again later, but Dreamforce Wave invite, even I can remember that one. So again, we'll make all that sample code available. I'm not exactly sure where yet, but we'll work it out. But it'll definitely be linkable. I'll blog it on like Developer Force, so you guys can get to it from there. We have about 5 minutes left for questions. Next slides. Yeah. All that sort of stuff. We've got about 5 minutes for Q&A. I think all of us are going to hang around afterwards as well. But I appreciate your time, and thanks very much.